Margaret Charles. Glasses because I can't read. The Links Incorporated is a nonprofit organization consisting of over 17,000 women of color in 29 chapters in the United States, Bahamas, and the United Kingdom. The Wilberforce and Springfield chapters have served their communities since the 1950s. So we've been in the community providing community service for a whole bunch of years. The speakers here today are going to focus on kidney issues, and I know one of them is at least a heart specialist, but we won't be talking about those kinds of issues today. So any questions you have for our speakers, please keep them to kidney issues. We want to thank Mercy Health for bringing the mobile mammography coach, and we encourage everyone that needs to have a screening to go out and talk with them. They are taking walk-ins, and certainly you can go out and schedule an appointment for a future time to be screened. We also want to thank all our vendors. I think there are about 30 of them. And so we thank them. They'll have all kinds of information for you, from mental health to they'll do screenings. And so we encourage you to visit them. We also want to thank St. John Missionary Baptist Church for allowing us to use this beautiful venue. I have a couple administrative things. The restrooms are out that door to the left. So if you need to take a break, go ahead and do that. There are folders on tables. We ask that you complete Survey 1. That will be somewhat of a pre-assessment of your knowledge of the topics that we're going to talk about later. After, when we break for lunch, then maybe you could have an opportunity to do this Survey 2. There's also an assessment of this event. So we want your feedback so that we may improve it for next year. And if you're like me, I always like to take notes. So we also have like a blank paper for you to be able to take notes. At the end of the session, if you can take the agenda, which has the schedule of events for today, along with the bios of the speakers, you can take that and your notes, of course, but please leave the assessments and the green envelopes on the table when you leave. The other thing that I want to talk about is there are 299 chapters of the links. 250 of them are doing a Black Family Wellness Expo today. And of that 250 that are doing their expos, Springfield and Wilberforce have been selected to participate in a Facebook Live presentation that is going to stream throughout the United States. So we encourage you to follow our Facebook pages so that you can look at it. You won't be able to see it like right now, but you will be able to see it later. Well, all of the links in the room, please stand or wave your hand so we can show who the links are. We all kind of have this outfit on, but yeah, I want to thank them for their participation. We've worked really hard to bring this event to our community, and we hope you enjoy it. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our Health and Human Services folks, and they're going to introduce the speakers. I guess before I do that, I need to ask, Margaret, do you have anything that you want to add? You want to do a shout out?
Yes, good shout out. Just wanted to say welcome and thank all of you for coming out. You look beautiful today. The weather, of course, wasn't cooperating, but we came anyway. I'm Margaret Charles, as she stated, and I'm here from Wilberforce chapter on behalf of our president, Sharon Spencer Williams, who wanted to be here, but unfortunately she had a death in her family. So we have lots of great vendors, a lot of work went into this event, so please take advantage of what you see, ask questions, collect information so that you go home and you can continue to utilize the information you learn here. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. To start the program, I want to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Surinder Neravetla. Dr. Neravetla received his medical degree from Osmania Medical College in Hyderabad, India. He has earned his cardiovascular surgery fellow at the University of Cincinnati, and he's performed over 10,000 cardiovascular surgeries. Without taking up much of his time, Dr. Neravetla.
Thank you, Lita. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Most of you know who are in Springfield area because I've been a Springfield resident for almost 40 plus years. And thank you, Links, for giving me the opportunity. And thank you for St. John's for allowing me to come back here. I've spoken here about the subject of my passion, which is prevention of heart disease, and along other heart disease, other things follow. But today we're going to focus, as Donna mentioned, on kidney disease. So without much further ado, given the short period of time that was given for me, I'll jump right into the topic. Can I have my first slide, please? So we have a problem with kidney disease among Black Americans. So I will touch on this subject without taking too much from Dr. Bound's presentation, which is going to be more in depth, I believe. So we have a problem of kidney disease in Black America. And what's the problem? The problem is 1/3 of all the people on dialysis in America are Black Americans. 1/3. However, you know, Black America is only 13% of United States. And 1/3 of Black America on dialysis. People sitting here, just about everybody who knows somebody who's on dialysis personally. I'm almost sure about that. But if I sat in an audience of purely Caucasians and asked the same question, how many of you know a person who's on dialysis? You'll be lucky to have 1 or 2 hands go up. But if I ask the same question in an audience like this, virtually every hand goes up. So there's such a huge problem in Black America. As if 35% or 1/3 of the people in Black America is not bad enough. Next slide, please. Next slide. The problem is much more devastating. When I say that, many Black Americans who are on dialysis are much younger than Caucasian counterparts. Much younger. Because the underlying causes like diabetes, high blood pressure affect Black America at a much younger age. Up there is a picture of a young lady somebody like that, exactly not the same person, I met way back in 1976. And I was just training in surgery, and this young lady was on dialysis. She was barely 25, and she was back in the day, we didn't have so many techniques that we save dialysis shunts like we have now. So this lady underwent surgery just about every other week, going through some surgery the other to continue on dialysis. So every surgical resident had a chance to operate on her. So she was a favorite of everybody. And one Sunday morning I was rounding, there were 2 young children, 3 and 5, came to visit her. So I asked her, who is these kids? I said, these are my children. And she said, I lost my kidney during the birth of my 2nd child. So my blood pressure went through the roof and knocked out my kidneys. The question is, when she's on dialysis up to 8 hours a day, every other day, and going through all these surgeries, who is taking care of these children? Who is raising these children? And when she's not on dialysis, I can assure you that she doesn't have enough energy to do other duties that she needs to do, taking care of herself, her family, and everybody else. So this is very, very sad and largely preventable, largely preventable. So we need to take note of this. That's why I have this picture on this earth. So when I saw that lady and took care of her for almost 6 months, I told myself, someday I'm going to write a story about her. It took me almost 30 plus years, but eventually I wrote the story. And you'll find that story in my book, Salt, Black America, Silent Killer. Those who have seen it or read it, you can recognize that. Next slide, please. So you have to remember that by the time your heart, kidney, and other things fail, it has been in the works for many decades. Many, many decades. Heart attack at 50 starts at 20. Dementia at 70 starts at 30s and 40s. And loss of independence, that's what we value so much. It's not so much that we're going to die someday, but how are we going to live in our later years? We are destroying our golden years by things that we do when you're young. Next slide, please. So in fact, heart attack and strokes, you can add kidney disease to this. In my recent research, found out that most animals don't have this. It's a purely human thing. We are doing it to ourselves. We are doing it to ourselves. Animals die of many other things, but generally not of heart attacks or strokes. Next slide, please. So we are doing two things really bad to our body. Top of the list. Top of the list is smoking, and next is putting salt in our diet. Both are equally bad, that destroy every organ system in the body, every single organ system in the body. Next slide, please. So I'm a heart surgeon. I don't know if you can see this or not, but don't rely on pills and procedure to save you. This is a quotation from one of the cardiologists. He said, nothing, 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 not cholesterol pills, not high blood pressure pills, not stents, not surgery. None of them constitutes either a cure, nor does it constitute a risk-free operation procedure. So whether you're taking a pill or going through any kind of procedure, neither it solves the problem, nor is it risk-free. High blood pressure, my friends, is a permanent disease. Once you have it for the rest of your life. But surprisingly, it is preventable. And if you don't take the steps to prevent high blood pressure, you'll have a long list of problems, and prominent among them is kidney failure. Next, please. So we have learned over years that smoking is really bad. But what is worse is actually high blood pressure. And high blood pressure kills more people than smoking and disables more people than smoking. And that is a slide from almost 10 years ago. And that's why high blood pressure is called the silent killer. It's called the silent killer. It's the number one problem in the world. There are almost 1.2 billion people in the world with high blood pressure. Almost 60-70% of adult black Americans have high blood pressure. That's how bad it is. 2/3. Yes, next slide, please. So risk factor for kidney disease. So we have a long list of them. But I want to point out to you in this list, the very top one is high blood pressure. Right next to it is diabetes. There's many other things, but controlling, preventing, controlling, diagnosing, treating high blood pressure is job number one. Next slide, please. Next slide. So I learned recently there's a genetic factor, I hope Dr. Brown will touch on this, called APOL1, which you have that genetic marker, you're at higher risk to having kidney disease. Hopefully he will touch on it. Next slide, please. So let's play this 1-minute video. We produced this video after a long, long trial. And this is extremely important. Every one of you, I hope, take a copy of this. We have a marker on our table. Please look at this and share with your friends and family. Can you play that, please?
Okay, what is high blood pressure that is killing millions of people around the world? Watch this heart pumping blood into these arteries. And note that each time the heart pumps blood, the arteries relax. Pump, relax, pump, relax. If the artery does not relax sufficiently, the pressure in the arteries goes up, and that is high blood pressure. So the heart and the artery is supposed to be in a coordinated pump relax motion, but when you develop high blood pressure, that means your arteries have lost the relaxing capability and offer resistance against the blood pumping action of the heart. So this is a serious catastrophic development that has consequences all over the body, which we will talk about in the future videos.
Thank you. So my time is up, but I just want to remind that we have to take individual responsibility. We are in the house of God here, and we have given a unique opportunity to share our stories and engage in prevention. So we have to first take our individual responsibility to what we are eating. Number two, we as a family and friends and communities need to get together and help each other to follow healthy habits. Friends don't bring friends unhealthy food. Grandmothers and grandparents don't feed their grandchildren unhealthy food just to gain favor. So we need to create healthy habits. We need to cultivate healthy habits. We need to foster and celebrate healthy habits. If I'm eating something healthy, people just kind of look negatively at me, for example. He's no fun guy. But we need to change that. Unless you change that, we're going to continue to suffer kidney failure, heart attacks, dementia, and so many more other problems. With that, I conclude. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Neravetla. At this time, I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker, Dr. Christopher Brown. What I want to also mention is in your program on this flip page, this other side is more of a detailed biography of both physicians. Okay, Dr. Brown completed his residency in internal medicine and a fellowship in nephrology at The Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. He is a dedicated healthcare leader committed to promoting healthy lifestyles and addressing health disparities in underserved communities. Currently, he is practicing nephrology at the Adena Regional Medical Center, as he also serves as medical director for the Ross County Health Department. Without further ado, I introduce Dr. Brown.
Okay. Good morning. All right. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for that presentation. That fits right in with mine. I love the fact that you're doing a lot of work from a lifestyle perspective. I think that's hugely important. So yet again, my name is Dr. Christopher Brown. So I am a clinical nephrologist, and so usually when I say nephrology, people say, "Well, what's that?" So I focus on high blood pressure and kidney disease. And so, of course, I'll be talking to you a little bit about today about chronic kidney disease, trying to get you to understand a little bit about what chronic kidney disease is and how we follow and how we monitor that. Okay. So I think we got some slides that are coming up a little bit, not quite as colorful, but hopefully it'll be helpful. So the first slide is a quote from Booker T. Washington, actually a couple of quotes from Booker T. Washington. And the first one is, without health and long life, all else fails. The other one I think is probably more impactful is that health more than learning and more than wealth is essential to, of course he said a man, but I put in there woman's success. And it just kind of underscores the importance of health. A lot of times I think, people sacrifice their health for whether it's gaining wealth or or other things, but the importance of health is essential to not only us as individuals, it's also important to the family, and then it's also important to us as a community. So next. Okay, so first thing I want to do is try to help you understand what chronic kidney disease is. So chronic kidney disease is defined with two major things. One is going to be the evidence of damage to the kidney. And so that's going to be with some of our testing. Sometimes it's done by what we call like imaging. We might find that you're missing a kidney, or maybe there's some structural issues going on with the kidney. And then the other thing we look at is how well the kidney is functioning. So one of the big jobs of the kidney is to filter out toxins in our body. So like I said, if that function goes down, then we know that kidney is not functioning the way it needs to. And one or the other, or both, need to be present for more than 3 months. So once we find that you have chronic kidney disease, we classify it into 5 stages, and all this stuff is we're going to go over again later on, into 5 stages, which kind of which go from 1 to stage 5. Stage 5 is what we call end-stage renal disease, and this is when you qualify for dialysis. And chronic kidney disease, as mentioned before, does increase the risk of heart disease, stroke, or early death. Next slide, please. Okay. So, how do we tell how well this kidney is functioning? So, like I said, one of the big things that a kidney does is it gets rid of waste products. And so, one of those waste products that's in your body is called creatinine, and this is something from muscle turnover. And so, your body creates a certain amount of creatinine every day. Your kidneys get rid of a certain amount of it every day. When it starts to accumulate, we know something is going on with that kidney. And so that is our primary way of telling whether or not that kidney is functioning the way it needs to. Now, one thing I always let people know or remind people of is the fact that creatinine is a little different than something called creatine, because a lot of people do confuse the two. Creatine, which you can get over the counter, is actually an energy source for muscles. And now, although the names are very similar, they're two different functions. The creatine is more of an energy source. The creatinine is the waste product that the muscles present. Okay, so that's the creatinine. So now the next thing, if you ever look at your labs, there's going to be something on there called an eGFR. I tell people to think of that as their kidney number. And so people are born, when you're born, your kidneys, nice and healthy, they're functioning properly. So people's eGFR can be anywhere from 90 up to 120, 130. When that number drops, we know that that kidney is not doing the work that it needs to. I tell people to think of it like kind of like a gas gauge or a battery gauge. So the lower that number goes, the less kidney function you have remaining. And the way they get this eGFR number is a long calculation based off the amount of creatinine that you have inside of your body. And so as that creatinine amount goes up, that kidney number or GFR goes down. And so that's kind of how we get that eGFR or kidney number. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so that's the function. Now, how do we assess for damage? One of the big ways that we look for damage inside of the kidney is something called proteinuria. And basically what that word means is that there'll be protein that we can tell in the urine. So the way we find that out is you'll give a urine sample and they'll run a test. And they'll see whether or not there's protein in the urine. The protein is supposed to be inside the bloodstream, but it's not supposed to be inside of the urine. So when we detect it, we know something has happened there. And what we can do is there's a very specific type of protein called albumin, and that's one of the earliest markers of kidney disease. So a lot of times what you can do, so if you go and get a regular dipstick, it'll tell you the protein. But there's a specific dipstick that you can get that looks for elevated levels of albumin inside of the urine. And if that's present, then that means there's some level of damage that's going on inside of the kidney. So the GFR is the one thing, it tells the function. The albuminuria or protein tells us if there's some damage going on in the kidney. Next slide, please. Okay, so why does chronic kidney disease matter in our community? And I think the previous speaker mentioned a lot of the things that are going on, that a lot of the reasons why chronic kidney disease is important. Number one, like a lot of diseases that are harmful, this is a silent disease. Chronic kidney disease has no symptoms until it is very advanced. I mean, some people might not feel it to stage 4, some people stage 5. Sometimes we get people that come in and we put them on dialysis, but they don't really feel any symptoms there. So you can't tell whether or not your kidneys are working okay. And then, of course, I think we mentioned before, the previous speaker mentioned about the CKD prevalence. And so, like I said, overall, it's about 15% of U.S. adults. But for African Americans, we make up about 35% of the people that have chronic kidney disease. And we're about 3 to 4 times more likely to advance on to end-stage renal disease or dialysis. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. If we detect it early, we have an opportunity to kind of slow kidney loss. We can, get on top of the high blood pressure, get that under control, get the diabetes under control, change diet, so that gives us the opportunity to do that. The other reason that early detection of chronic kidney disease is important is because it gives an opportunity to diagnose and possibly treat. While we're talking about high blood pressure and diabetes, there are other diseases that affect the kidney, and some of them can actually be treated. So if we find them early, we can treat them early. But if so if somebody comes to me and I find out they have stage 3, and I find that it's a disease that can be treated, I can treat it at a stage 3. But if they come to me right at the level of dialysis, and I can only preserve what's left. And so that person's kidney function, they've lost a lot of kidney function already. And although I may keep them off dialysis for a little while, that person is at higher risk of developing end-stage kidney disease later on. So the earlier we find this stuff out, the earlier we treat it, the more kidney function we can preserve. Okay. The other thing is for preparation for what we call renal replacement therapy, and that's what the dialysis and transplantation. So yet again, getting your that chronic kidney disease detected early is the difference between, yet again, you come in to me at a stage 3, we work with you, we get your blood pressure under control, diabetes under control. Even if that kidney function continues to decrease and you're going towards what we call end-stage kidney disease or dialysis, it's different if you have a few years to learn, to adjust, and to get ready for dialysis or to get on a transplant list than if you come to me and your kidney function is right before dialysis, and within a couple of months you're on dialysis, and there's a trauma of making that transition. So these are some of the reasons why we want to detect your CKD early. And then, of course, economic costs. Chronic kidney disease, like a lot of other chronic diseases, there's lost productivity, there's increase in insurance costs, and there's increased health expenditures. Even if your health premium doesn't go up, you've got to take off your job, you got to go to the doctor's office more often. So, you've got to pay for medications. So all these things are why chronic kidney disease matters in our community. Next slide, please. Okay. And just a special mention, I think we mentioned it a little bit before, and that is, the 2 biggest drivers of chronic kidney disease are going to be diabetes, number 1, hypertension is number 2. And so diabetes is the number 1 cause. It causes about 40% of chronic kidney disease. And why that's important to us, because we have a disproportionate number of our people that have diabetes. And so, 12% of African American adults have diabetes, 7.4% of white adults. And probably a bigger thing that I don't think people talk about as much, but is super important, is pre-diabetes. And what pre-diabetes is whenever we can detect that you're at risk of developing full-blown diabetes. And yet again, this is another one of these diseases, if we find it early, you actually can reverse pre-diabetes and not go into the diabetic realm, and that keeps you from getting, on the medications that are needed to treat diabetes, as well as the complications from diabetes as well. Okay, and the other thing that's not mentioned a lot is that children are getting type 2 diabetes. This used to be unheard of, because for the most part, type 2 diabetes really is a kind of a diet and lifestyle. It's usually associated with obesity. And it used to be that we didn't see children with diabetes, but increasingly, more and more young people are being diagnosed with this, basically an adult disease. And unfortunately, the rates of diabetes type 2 are increasing. So why is that important? Well, if you get diagnosed with type 2 diabetes at 20, and you have and you go on, like I said, you might get your end-stage renal disease at maybe 35, 40. But if you back that down to the age of 10, which is the youngest child I've ever seen with type 2 diabetes, now this child at the age of 30 might be developing diabetes and its sequelae. So that's why that's kind of important. Next slide, please. Hypertension, like I said, the number 2 cause of chronic kidney disease at about 25%. As mentioned before, about little over half of African Americans have hypertension. We get hypertension earlier. We get hypertension more severely. We're almost twice as likely to have uncontrolled hypertension. And yet again, this is another of those chronic diseases that can be silent, but can lead to a lot of bad outcomes. Kidney disease is one of those. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, with this, I decided to do what we call a case study in med school, and that is where you kind of go over a particular case and just kind of talk about how this thing works. So this is, we're going to talk about Miss Johnson. So, 53-year-old African-American woman. She has a history of hypertension and diabetes for about 7 years. And she was referred to me for what we call an elevated albumin to creatinine ratio, or that elevated albuminuria that was detected. So on routine labs. So what does this mean, and how does this relate to diagnosing chronic kidney disease? Okay, next slide, please. Okay. So what's the first thing I want to do? Confirm this CKD. So we want to check the albumin that's in there and make sure it's elevated. And then we're going to check the kidney number, the eGFR, and like I said, those need to be present for more than 3 months. Once that's present, then we have the diagnosis of chronic kidney disease. Next thing I need to do is stage the chronic kidney disease. So from stage 1 down to stage 5. And of course, the lower stages mean you have less kidney function remaining. Next slide, please. Okay. And we have another slide that's going to talk about exactly what those stages mean. Okay. And then once we get that, then I'm going to assess for risk factors and complications. So looking for diabetes, I'll be looking for hypertension. The blood pressure, we like to keep that number less than 130/80. And I always like to remind people of that, because a lot of people think that having blood pressure in the 140s and 150s is okay, and it's not okay. And especially if you have chronic kidney disease, and honestly, if you have diabetes as well. The lower that blood pressure, the less likely you are to have the complications of uncontrolled hypertension. Okay. So we get that under control. I always check to make sure they have signs and symptoms of heart disease, because a lot of times people have had these diseases for longer than sometimes even they know. The other thing is this: chronic kidney disease is a cardiovascular risk factor. So anytime I have a patient in my office that has chronic kidney disease, I always assess them, and I always assess them for signs and symptoms of heart failure. So sometimes it's like leg swelling. Sometimes it's just, I just feel a little more tired than usual. Okay, tell me about that. When I walk upstairs, I get a little short of breath. So sometimes it may not be the typical, chest tightness or chest squeezing. It could just be some slight changes that are there. And when that happens, I know I need to get this person to the cardiologist so that they can get their heart evaluated. Because you can have, I guess it's no longer asymptomatic, but you can have heart disease. And sometimes, especially if they have diabetes, you can actually have heart attacks that you may not notice. Okay, so that's that. And then other things that we check vitamin D levels, something called uric acid, which can lead to gout, and then also evaluate for anemia. Next slide, please. Okay. Now this is going back to the stages. So yet again, we talked about this. So the things that we look for are the function, which is the GFR. We also look for the albuminuria. And the big thing that I tell most people to keep an eye on is that kidney number. So that kidney number is what puts you into one of these stages. So for Ms. Johnson, she's got a GFR of 45. So that's going to put her at what we call stage 3. Now, the majority of people that have chronic kidney disease, this is where we find them, is that stage 3. There's one caveat that I like to remind people also about the GFR. So, some labs won't really tell you what your GFR is until it is less than 60, which becomes a little bit of an issue, because sometimes they're like, oh, why didn't somebody tell me? Well, the lab your doctor used didn't have anything until less than 60, which I think is kind of an issue, because especially for us, the earlier we can intervene, the earlier we can slow this thing down. Fortunately, I see more and more labs that are starting to show that GFR at the higher levels, and so that becomes very helpful. So that's kind of where we are there. So these are the 5 stages. Yet again, at stage 1, what that means is that your kidney function might be normal, but we've found some damage, such that proteinuria or albuminuria. And then as that kidney number falls, you get to these other stages. Stage 5 is basically what we call pretty much kidney failure. You qualify for dialysis. And at that point in time, we kind of have to monitor you pretty closely and get you ready, basically get you ready for dialysis. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. And then why are African Americans at higher risk? And I think we touched on this before. So we have higher rates of hypertension and diabetes. There are a lot of social determinants of health that also impact this. So there's access to care, there are nutrition factors and economic factors, as well as cultural experiences. So what happens is that if you know someone else that had a bad experience, then that makes you less likely to go to the doctor. A lot of times I find that there is significant hesitation in getting a clinician unless they or a doctor unless they look like the person. One of the things that I've experienced, and one of the reasons why I actually opened my private practice, was that when I would do these health fairs, a lot of the people, especially African American men, would not go to a doctor unless it was a black man. And even in situations where I would say, well, my doctor is not black, they're like, I'm not going. And at first I thought it was, couldn't really figure it out. But as I've talked to more of them, some of them have had either they or someone they know have had some very negative experiences in their healthcare space. And so unfortunately that sort of information gets transferred. The bad information gets transferred a lot faster than the good information. And so it's leading to a lot of people not getting the health care that they need. And unfortunately, these men are in, this prime condition, in their prime condition, 30s and 40s, where they have families. And so unfortunately, from that standpoint, we really have to talk to them to make sure that they go in and at least get a primary care doctor to at least get screened for some of these diseases. And then the other reason why we had higher risk, and that was mentioned before, is this APOL1 gene variant. We'll talk about a little bit later on, that increases the risk of developing kidney disease as well as the progression of chronic kidney disease. Next slide, please. Okay, and then once I get this diagnosed, what do we do? So we got to manage the chronic kidney disease. Blood pressure control is key. Blood pressure control is key. Blood pressure control is key. So you got to make sure that number is where it needs to be. And so you want it less than 130/80. I actually try to get it down as low as they can tolerate without symptoms, because that lower blood pressures are associated with better outcomes. Making sure the diabetes is under control. You want that hemoglobin A1C to be less than 7%. And then there are certain medications, SGLT2, and then the GLP-1s. These are newer medications that were originally for diabetes, but they also found that they reduce chronic kidney disease progression. The GLP-1s, of course, help with weight loss, which that's the weight loss injection. And so those medications are important. And then lifestyle changes. I mentioned that a little bit before. Next slide, we're going to mention a little bit more. Okay. So lifestyle medicine. There's actually a specialty. I actually got certified in this, what we call lifestyle medicine, because we're finding that it is a powerful tool for controlling a lot of these chronic diseases. A lot of the chronic diseases are kind of driven by obesity. Obesity, of course, is driven by lifestyle. And so they're finding that if we make changes and actually counsel patients on lifestyle changes, that we're leading to a lot of positive outcomes. And so what sort of lifestyle things do we talk about? So plant-based, so whole food plant-based diets are huge. There's also a diet called a DASH diet that's good for our high blood pressure. These support kidney health, they lower blood pressure, and they're all promote overall wellness. You want to reduce your sodium intake. I mentioned that before. You want some regular exercise. You want to maintain a healthy weight, and the weight is huge because, losing around 5 pounds is equivalent to taking a blood pressure medication. So, and if you lose enough weight, I've had people that were on blood pressure medications that lose weight that actually, get off of all of their blood pressure medications. So it's actually quite huge. Next slide, please. Okay. You want to reduce stress. Stress releases hormones that are kind of harmful to the body. And when we say reducing stress, we're in a house of the Lord. So prayer, meditation is huge. Not only at that moment, but also in shaping how you experience adverse conditions. And that also can kind of help with kind of lowering your stress level. The other thing we look at is social connections, making sure that you have good relationship with your family, making sure you have good friends. These are all associated with positive outcomes overall. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. So that's lifestyle, and next we're going to talk about a little bit about the APOL1 gene and kidney disease. So what APOL1 is they found that this is a genetic mutation that occurred in West Africa. And the reason it occurred was that it was designed to actually protect people from the African sleeping sickness. And it's it worked well for that, so you got a survival benefit for that. But they found out here that the APOL1 gene seems to be associated with a lot of our kidney dysfunction. And the way it works is it's what we call a recessive gene. So in order for it to damage the kidney or put you at risk of damaging the kidney, you have to have a copy from your mom and a copy of the abnormal gene from your mom, a copy of the abnormal gene from your dad. And whenever you have that, you're at risk of certain kidney diseases. So there are some studies that think that our discrepancy, especially in hypertensive kidney diseases, might be due solely to this genetic marker. Unfortunately, a lot of people, because it's new, a lot of people don't have that testing. But like I said, as we make people more aware, more people get as we continue to go forward and make people more aware of this, and they do more studies, they're trying to find out if there are ways to actually either prevent the damage that's coming from the APOL1 gene or to treat it. But those things are currently being tested right now. Let's see. Next slide. Okay. So in terms of action overall, so we want to make sure that you know your numbers. You want to make sure you establish with primary care. Establishing with primary care is actually quite essential because they're the people that are going to be looking over your overall health. They're also going to be doing your routine lab work, so you should be getting this GFR at least once a year. You also, if you have risk factors, you should also be getting that albumin test at least once a year as well. And then also, of course, they're treating all the rest of your diseases there. So know your risk factors, and also, adopt a kidney-friendly or what we call, healthy lifestyle in order to prevent the chronic diseases that actually drive a lot of the chronic kidney diseases. So I think that's pretty much it from mine. Next slide, I think that's it. Okay. I think this is just, spread awareness in the community and things of this nature. Next slide. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much it. Does anyone have any questions? No. Okay. Sure. Okay.
Hi, Dr. Brown.
How you doing?
Fine. I just wanted you to explain why is it that diabetes causes so much kidney disease?
So much kidney disease? So I think the diabetes has a number of factors on the body. So remember, diabetes is causing, increased risk of heart disease, stroke. And so a lot of times it's vascular. So it's interacting negatively with the vasculature, and the kidney, of course, has a lot of vasculature. So the kidney actually gets about 20% of the blood flow every time the heart beats, and it's literally a bunch of vessels that are kind of together, and then they kind of, I don't know if they fuse, but there's something called a glomerulus there, and it literally filters all the blood that you get. So when the blood sugar goes up and it's damaging the vessels and the rest of the body, it's just damaging the kidney as well. So that's where that comes from.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. So in simple terms, both high blood pressure and diabetes do something wrong with the kidney and many other parts of the body. And that is, as you probably picked up from my video, that these things affect every part of every nook and corner of the human body. So there is a unit of filtration in the kidney called the glomerulus. Not getting into the details of it. It needs blood supply and it's got a filter mechanism. So both diabetes and high blood pressure simultaneously or separately affect how the blood goes to that unit of filtration, and also affect the actual filter itself different ways. There's a parallel and overlapping way these two things, like 1-2 punch, affect the basic filtering unit of the kidney. So blood flow is affected, the filtering system, the membrane as you call it, like a filter at home, and that filtering system is also affected, both of them, in very simple words. So you want to avoid getting both of those diseases. Thank you.
Okay, she has
Thank you.
one more follow-up question.
Okay, coming from the old country, from the deep south,
Okay.
you know, the other generations, the older generations used to call it sugar clogging or salt clogging. And they would tell us to go to the well and clear the sugar clogs. So when you talk about the filtering units, that's what comes to my mind. And for those of us from that type of ancestry, I just thought I'd share that with you.
Say that one more time.
Okay. I'm from the deeper south, and the former generations, like my grandparents, used to talk about the sugar clogs or the salt clogs in the kidneys. And they would send people to the well to flush it out because back in the old days during segregation, there were no doctors and there were no hospitals. So I just thought I'd share that with you.
Okay, all right. Oh, that's interesting. So I'm wondering if they were talking about the urination part or like a kidney stone? Like just drinking.
Well, Dr. Applin, she also has something to say.
Okay.
Dr. Brown, I just wanted to know where your office is and are you taking new patients?
Okay. So I do have an office in Westerville, and yes, I'm taking new patients. I have a telemedicine. So it's kind of a hybrid. So you have in person and then telemedicine. The practice was literally formed with the concept of getting referrals from primary care clinicians in order to help them with what we call the early stage chronic kidney disease. Because as a nephrologist, what I found is that most nephrologists want the advanced, the people with advanced kidney disease. Whereas primary care kind of, some of them don't mind taking care of people that have proteinuria and things of this nature, but some of them would rather refer them as soon as anything's wrong with your kidneys. And kind of like you said, I mean, the early CKD is where we can make the most impact. This is when you can talk to people, especially, like I said, from what I'm seeing now. That is, 30, 40, 50-year-olds with pre-diabetes, their blood pressure slightly up, they're a little bit obese. And that's where I'm finding the biggest impact can be made. Because if I can talk to you and say, hey, these factors are contributing to what is early kidney, and I literally have a monitor. I pull up their labs and I say, see that little red thing there? That's albumin in your urine. That means that your kidney is damaged. Like I said, I know your number, the function is up here, but if we don't get this under control, this number is going to drop, and at some point in time, you may be facing dialysis. And then, of course, the next question is what we got to do. Okay, well, your blood pressure's high, so you need some blood pressure medication. You got pre-diabetes, so we need to get that worked on. Like, I don't want to take these medications. Well, like I said, we still need to get the blood pressure under control, but the other thing you can do is, what's your diet? Okay, well, I eat burgers and fries, twice a day. I eat some green beans, collard greens. Okay, well, let's back off some of this, change the diet, work on weight loss, and you can do that path. If you don't, we're going to start with these medications. I guarantee you we're going to have some more. And when you put it out there like that, a lot of times people will realize what's happening. And then they'll be like, well, why ain't my primary tell me this? I tell people, your primary care doctor, in order to keep their office open, has 7 minutes per patient if they want to keep the door open. So they don't have time for that. So this practice is developed with the plan to talk to you. So the primary care doctor's already kind of got the groundwork. That I'm getting labs, so I got a little more time to talk to you. So that's what this practice is for. But long story short, yes, I have a practice. I'm taking new patients, and I can either do virtual or I can do in person. But I will get your card.
We have Nick here with the Clark County Combined Health District who would like to say something.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Dr. Brown. I just had a question for since the rate of CKD is so prevalent and so high, if you're doing like routine lab testing, is there any other additional tests specifically for a liver function, or not liver function, but kidney function, that you would include? So I would assume probably like a metabolic panel, a CBC, or urinalysis, but is there any additional testing that you would include just for routine labs?
For routine, so the routine labs should get you that. So the routine what we call basic metabolic panel or comprehensive metabolic panel should get you the creatinine and the EGFR should be on there. Now the other thing is that make sure to do the urine test. So that urine test that should be done. Now the typical urine test will check for what we call the proteinuria, which is kind of the larger amount of protein. If you have risk factors, they should do a specific one called the albumin albumin test, because that checks for early stage kidney disease. Most people won't do that on a routine test unless you have some risk factors, hypertension, diabetes, family history of kidney disease. Those sort of things will get you the albuminuria. Sometimes you may have to ask or prompt your primary care clinician in order to make sure that's done. But those tests get the main 2 screening tests for chronic kidney disease.
We have Angela here with Faith Community Health Ministry, and after Angela, we only have room for one more question.
I'd like to ask how one gets on a list to donate a kidney. Do you have to be referred by the person who's going through the dialysis, or is there some type of a list that is maintained for those who are able to give a kidney to someone who's in need?
Okay, so number one, I think if you want to you can get registered to donate, which of course you do whenever you go sign up for your license. So you can get on that registry. Specifically for kidneys, typically, actually let me step back a brief moment. So, because I do want to mention one thing, and that is with chronic kidney disease, you qualify to receive a kidney or to go on a kidney transplant when your kidney number drops below 20. So that's before you get on dialysis, because that's something that a lot of people do not know. So I want to put that piece out there. So in terms of like, if you want to donate a kidney to someone, I don't think there's a specific group or a specific list that I know of for people that just want to randomly donate to people that want kidneys. There probably is something on social media, honestly. However, like I said, if you know someone, then you can donate that kidney. So that person will be going through the process of being evaluated for a transplant. If they know you, then that person can bring you in to be evaluated for the transplant.
Okay. And we have this one last question here.
I think we got it. Okay.
Hi.
Okay.
What is the DASH diet?
Oh, so the DASH diet is a diet that is really geared towards lowering your high blood pressure. And of course, I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but I'll have to get that. You got it.
So DASH is not just it stands for dietary approaches to stop high blood pressure. That's what DASH is. Dietary approaches to stop high blood pressure. That's diet. There are numerous studies done and came up with a diet recipe. The most key ingredients of that recipe is low salt and use a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. That is a 2-part. You eat a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, limit your meat intakes, especially for processed food, and limit your salt intake. That is DASH diet. In fact, we have got DASH, you can find DASH salt substitute in almost all the stores. I want to make one clarification since I have the mic from Dr. Brown's presentation. It was a tremendous presentation. I enjoyed it very much. And the clarification I'd like to make is you saw a slide that says eat less than 2,300 milligrams of sodium. And most people interpret that, unfortunately, to think that I need 2,300 milligrams of salt. No. No medical organization says you need any amount of salt. Every one of them says stay below this number. And 2,300 is most commonly accepted number, but American Heart Association says stay below 1,500 milligrams, especially for Black American, especially for people who have high blood pressure or diabetes. So just remember that 0 is also a number below 1,500. So your target really should be 0. If you're trying to make excuses for, I can get away with this, and most importantly, you misinterpret this information to say that I need 2,300 milligrams, it's a disaster. And I hear this all the time. You do not need 2,300 milligrams. You need to stay below that, especially stay below 1,500. You can enjoy your food at 0 like we do for the last 15 years. You're even better off. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good.
There is some important information, though, that we do want to share about the registry.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. I loved your I loved your presentation. I just wanted to answer the question, is there a general registry? And yes, there is. It is called bethematch.com. And it is a general registry where you can, you'll put in your data, and it's a really simple form, and they'll send you a kit, and you'll do a swab of your mouth. You put it back in the envelope, and you send it back. On this registry, it's kidney transplant, sickle cell, blood bone marrow. I mean, there's a whole list. And if you do match, they'll contact you, and you do not have to make the decision at that time. You can weigh your pros and cons, but they will pay for all of your travel and your lodging during that time period. I just wanted to add that information.
Thank you, Link Tracy. Thank you so much. And again, thank you, Dr. Brown, Dr. Nervatla, for those wonderful presentations. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Leonard K.A.R.E. Mr. K.A.R.E. is the music director at the Church of Jesus Family Worship Center, and he struggled with a long-term blood pressure issue that resulted in his kidneys going into renal failure. Therefore, it caused him to require him to go on dialysis. A couple of years later, he was able to receive a kidney transplant. So, Mr. K.A.R.E., I'd like for you to come forward and tell us about your journey.
Good morning. July 25th, the day my doctor's voice, that is the day that my doctor's voice changed everything. Go to the emergency room immediately. And these words would be the beginning of my journey with renal failure. But it also started a story about faith, about resilience, and discovering what truly matters in life. Standing here today, I want to share my journey of renal failure, not just as a patient, but as someone who has learned the important lessons about the power of faith and the strength of love and the unwavering presence of God in our darkest hours. My story actually starts back in 1996, as the lady was saying, when I was diagnosed with high blood pressure. And like many of us, I got caught up in my career, and my work came before my health. Long hours, frequent business trips, irregular schedules. I wasn't managing my meds as I should have. July 25th, 2019 started out as a normal day. I was working, preparing to teach a class, and when something just felt off, so far off until I canceled that class, and that's something that I rarely do. And I had completed some blood work a couple of days earlier, but I felt the need to call my doctor to see if he could get me in that day. But before I could get to that appointment, he called me and said, "Go to the emergency room immediately." My test results had come in and my creatinine was through the roof. This was the beginning of my renal journey. I'll never forget those 5 days in the hospital. The doctor moved quickly to put a catheter in my chest, and that catheter was going to be my lifeline that would allow them to start dialysis. My body went through a lot of changes. I felt weak after treatments. I slept for hours. I threw up. I felt dizzy and lightheaded. During my in-center dialysis, the medical staff was incredible. Doctors, nurses, technicians. They didn't just treat my condition, but they guided me through and educated me and supported me and helped me to reshape my perspective in life. They were compassionate, and they always helped me to see the glass as being half full rather than being half empty. And each dialysis session became a time of reflection, of meditation on God. I learned that sometimes the hardest things are blessings in disguise. Every beep of the machine reminded me that I'm still here and I'm still fighting. And each treatment reminded me that while I couldn't change my condition, I could change how I faced it. I went to dialysis 3 hours a day, 3 times a week. I was grateful for in-center dialysis, but I yearned to have my independence back. I was on in-center dialysis for 2 weeks before I made the decision to switch over to peritoneal dialysis, which is also called PD. Now, PD works differently than hemodialysis. It uses the lining in your stomach, called the peritoneum, as a natural filter. And special fluids called dialysate flows into your stomach and absorbs the waste and the extra fluid from your body, and then it's drained away. And the best part, I did it at night while I slept. Now, after having the surgery and being trained on the procedure, I was able to start dialysis at home August of 2019, just 2 months after starting in-center dialysis. Twice a month, the pallet of supplies would arrive at my house, and I was responsible for ordering my own supplies. I kept inventory. I rotated inventory. I made sure that I always had enough supplies to last until the next order. One thing I want to emphasize, and that is dialysis doesn't mean that life stops. Even while being on both types of dialysis, I was still able to travel. Now, with peritoneal dialysis, I could have supplies shipped directly to my hotel. And for hemodialysis, I could schedule treatments at centers near my destination. Early on, when I was doing in-center dialysis, my doctor had approved a trip to Myrtle Beach. And it was a trip that my wife and I had planned long before I was diagnosed with renal failure. And I'll never forget it. It's etched in my mind. Our last morning in Myrtle Beach, I reached down to pick something off the bathroom floor, and my catheter came out, and I started to bleed from my chest. And with my catheter in one hand and a towel pressed against my chest with the other, I went in the room. And when I saw my wife, the look in her eyes told me she wanted to lose it. But she kept her composure. She called the front desk, and help came, an emergency squad came and rushed me to a very crowded hospital. I was never even put in a room. They treated me from a hallway. And after they had stopped the bleeding, I waited in that hallway for hours. When they finally got back around to me, they wanted to put a new chest catheter in, but I really just wanted to go back home to have it done. The doctor told my wife and I that during that 10-hour trip home, the bleeding could reoccur. And if that happened, we would have to find another hospital. My wife called my nephrologist back home, and he told her to bring me in and that they would be waiting for me. My wife has been known to be a fast driver, but I'd never seen anything like this before. As I was reclined back in my seat for 8.5 hours, keep in mind the trip was 10 hours, I saw a woman determined and focused to get me back home to my doctor as soon as she could. We made it in record time, and I'm not sure how we managed to not get a ticket. And just as the doctor said, they were waiting for me. The catheter was replaced, and I was doing well. Life adapts. It doesn't end. I was on peritoneal dialysis for 22 months, from October 2019 to 2021. And out of the 3 dialysis that I did, peritoneal was the one that gave me the most freedom. My diet was not as strict, and my days were free. But one of the setbacks with the peritoneal dialysis is it's very easy to get an infection at the exit site. Absolutely everything has to be sterile. If something drops on the floor, I had to leave it until my treatment was over. Now, some kind of way, I ended up with an infection along with diverticulitis. And diverticulitis is a condition where small pouches in the wall of the intestines becomes infected. And the pain was absolutely unbearable. When leaving the hospital, I told myself, I never want to go through that pain again. So July 2020, I decided to do in-home hemodialysis. And the training took longer, but there was more to learn. There's weeks of in-center training. Water has to be tested in your home. Special plumbing has to be installed in your home. And there's a lot that goes into hemodialysis before you can begin. And my situation was a little unique because we were in the process of selling our house in Dayton, Ohio, and purchasing one in Springfield. Now, my completion date for in-center training was before the closing date of our new house, which meant that I would not have a home set up to do dialysis. Neither date could be changed to accommodate my needs, and it was important for me to go straight from in-center dialysis to in-home dialysis without there being a gap. So it put me in a position where I had to ask the seller permission to come and have water tested and plumbing installed, and this was even before the closing of the house. But thankfully, he gave us the okay. And I did in-home dialysis 4.5 hours a day for 4 days a week. And I did it early in the morning so I could have most of my day free. My training nurse was with me for the first week. Then after that, I was on my own. And I did hemodialysis in home from August 2020 to October 2021, 14 months. My lesson in receiving a transplant itself was a lesson of patience and faith in God. I received 3 calls from OSU before my actual transplant. When on a transplant list, you must have your phone with you at all times. They can call you at any time, day or night. And when you receive that call, you have to be ready in a moment's notice. For me, I just had a couple of hours to get to the hospital. The first call I received was July 2021, and it was around 4 p.m. in the afternoon. First, there was excitement, followed by disappointment. Before I could even leave the house, they called and said the doctor was not going to approve the kidney. What a huge disappointment. By the time I received the second call, approximately 5 weeks had passed by, and it was around 7 p.m. in the evening. And my wife was home, and we were both excited. We reached OSU, and I got settled in the room. The surgery was supposed to take place early that morning. I laid in bed, couldn't sleep. My wife was on the couch. She couldn't sleep. Then around 3 a.m., one of the doctors knocked on the door and came in the room, and he told me that he had some bad news. Said the kidney that had been received was not going to be approved for the transplant. It really felt like someone just knocked the air out of me. The first letdown was hard, but this was even harder. I kept trying to see the glass as half full by telling myself it's a blessing in disguise and telling myself that I'll get another call soon. Week after week passed by with no call. The 5th week passed, no call. 6th week passed, no call. By the 7th week, I really thought that I wasn't going to get it. I thought they had passed me by. Then one evening, my wife and I were coming home from Dayton, Ohio, and we were around 3 minutes away from the house. And the phone rang. And it was a 614 area code. The lady on the other end said, "We have a kidney for you." And immediately my eyes began to tear up because I knew that was the kidney for me. We arrived at the hospital. I got settled in the room. The surgery was not scheduled till 6:30 that morning. I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed watching the clock on the wall. At 3 a.m., it came to my mind that this was around about the time the doctor knocked on the door and gave me bad news. 4 o'clock rolled around, 5 o'clock rolled around, and then there was a knock at the door. And this time there was a positive tone in the nurse's voice. The first 8 words out of her mouth were like music to my ears. "It's time to get you prepped for surgery." The surgery went well. I was walking in the halls by day 2. October 13th, 2021 became my new beginning. And through this entire journey, my faith in God has been absolutely everything. For anyone who is going through something similar, remember, stay focused on the things that really make you happy. Always maintain a positive outlook. Never give up. Persistence is crucial. Treat dialysis as your lifeline. Attend every appointment. Accept help from family and friends. You don't have to face it alone. Appreciate every moment of life. And looking to the future, my plan is very simple. Live life to the fullest. This journey has taught me that while we cannot control everything that happens to us, we can control how we respond. Kidney failure changed my life, but it didn't end it. Instead, it gave me a new perspective on what really matters. Before I conclude, I need to acknowledge someone very special. My wife, Kathy. From the first urgent call to go to the emergency room, through every dialysis treatment, every setback, every triumph, she's been my rock. She's been there 100% of the way. She's been so involved in my health care that even doctors and nurses have repeatedly commented on her dedication and commitment. Kathy, you've been my angel through this entire journey. I want to leave you all with just one crucial message. Kidney failure can be preventable. My story did not have to unfold like this. Regular checkups, screenings, and routine blood work can catch problems early. Think about your health as a car. Regular maintenance prevents breakdowns. But if you or someone you know does face renal failure, it's not the end of the story. It's just a different chapter. The key is to stay positive. Even though renal failure is a physical disease, how you deal with it mentally determines a lot of how it will affect the rest of your life. Even on your hardest days, you have to see the glasses half full. Follow your diet, take your meds, keep your appointments. Your life may change, but it can still be rich, meaningful, and full of purpose. Today, I stand before you not just as a kidney transplant patient, but as living proof that our greatest challenges can become our greatest teachers. This journey has taught me that while dialysis cleanses the blood, it is faith that cleanses the spirit. While medicine heals our bodies, it's love that heals our souls. Your dialysis, your diagnosis isn't your destination. Your conclusion, your condition is not your conclusion. Family, faith, and friends and determination can turn your darkest chapter into your most powerful testimony. Your health is not just a gift for yourself, it's also a precious gift for those who you love and those who love you. Don't wait for a wake-up call. Let my journey be your lesson. Let my experience be your warning, and my triumph your experience. Kidney failure changed my story, but faith, love, and determination wrote its ending. I'm here to let you know that our darkest chapters can lead to our brightest beginnings. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Mr. K.A.R.E, for sharing your journey. Next, we'll have Ms. Cynthia Applin, and I think we're in for a treat. Ms. Cynthia Applin is a program assistant for the Ohio State University Expanded Food and Nutrition Program. Her bio, again, is extensive, so I'll let you read that. Her workshops focus on healthy eating, food safety, meal planning, physical activity, and much more. She's a Springfield native and no stranger to education, as she's been involved in higher ed for over 25 years and has worked for numerous colleges and universities. Ms. Cynthia.
Is it still morning? It is still morning. Good morning, everybody. Hey, I have here with me Miss Nancy Lyons. She is my program specialist, director, supervisor, and we're going to share with you the FNEP program. And with sharing with you that, we're also going to do a demonstration, but in the essence of time, we didn't want to come between you all and lunch, so we're going to hold our demonstration at our table after lunch, so you'll still be able to have some lunch, because I know we've been sitting for a while, and I think that's great. But Nancy's going to first give you the introduction to our program, and then I'll talk a little bit more in depth about the actual classes that we have and how we help support nutrition and cooking at the same time.
Thank you, Cynthia. Hi, I'm Nancy Lyons. I am the FNEP program specialist in Clark, Montgomery, and Greene counties. The Expanded Food Nutrition Education Program, I'll just call it FNEP from here on out, is 56 years old. It started in 1969. At that time, FNEP educators, I think they were called agents through OSU Extension, would go out into families' homes, and women, a lot more women, of course, worked in the home, and they would have family and friends come over, and then the FNEP agents would come in and teach basic cooking classes and nutrition. So we've kind of moved away from that. We are in 19 counties in Ohio. We're mostly in urban areas. OSU Extension, I don't know how much you know about that. Every county in Ohio has an OSU Extension office, and I like to describe that kind of like an extension cord from the university out into the counties. It started mostly as a resource for farmers, and the idea started in, I'm trying to think the year that extension, let's see, 1869. But anyway, it started to help farmers. And so some of the agriculture, some of the new farming techniques were sent out into the counties through OSU Extension. OSU Extension here in Clark County, it houses 4-H, master gardeners. We have an ag educator. We have a 4-H educator. FNEP falls under the FCS umbrella, so we have an FCS educator as well. So now we offer free nutrition education classes. We target low income, limited resource families. We target adults, children. We have a pregnancy curriculum. We also started several years ago, we got permission through the USDA NEFA, who funds us, to start targeting emerging adults. So we may have a class that is specific for 18 to 26-year-olds, and that just started. We discuss in our classes healthy eating. We talk about food security, so we might help some of our participants get benefits like WIC or SNAP benefits. We might help them find other resources in the community like pantries, things like that. We talk about food safety, food resource management. We talk a lot about budgeting, couponing, that sort of thing. And we also talk about the importance of daily physical activity. So at every one of our classes, we do some kind of a physical activity with our participants. Our classes are free. We like to do them face-to-face, but we can do them virtually. In Springfield, we could have classes at the Extension office, but we like to go out into the community. And I tell people when someone calls me about a class, all we need is an extension cord and a sink. That's all we need for our classes. We bring everything else. We bring all the food, all the materials needed for the class. We offer enhancements. So we talk a lot about knife skills, and so for that class, we'll give each of the participants a cutting board. We talk about, during our food safety lesson, we talk a lot about using a meat thermometer. So we give all of our participants a meat thermometer. We do cookbooks, water bottles. We used to do pedometers. We haven't done those for a while, but that was very popular. And at the end, each one of our graduates that completes the series of 7 to 9 classes will receive a certificate of completion from Ohio State University. So that's a very popular ending to our program. Right now in Clark County, we are in Habitat for Humanity, Springfield City Schools. We've been, Cynthia's starting a class at juvenile court soon. We've been at Rocking Horse, On the Rise, Springfield Promise Neighborhood, and several others. And, FNEP has reached thousands of families across the state in 2024. So if you're interested in classes, or if your agency's school would like to learn more about it, we do have a table back there. I'd love to talk to you about it.
I just want to add to that. I'm really excited to see in the audience some FNEP participants and graduates. Could those of you that have attended my class please stand up? I really appreciate you all being here, and thank you. We will be offering a class that's going to be sponsored by the Church of Jesus. I hope I have that right. And those classes will start April the 1st. There's flyers and information on our table about that. I'm going to do the demonstration back here at the table after lunch. Like I said, we didn't want to come between now and lunch because we was getting hungry too. So I wanted to make sure that you are aware of that. There's lots of information that I want to share with you about it. We do have a lot of our recipes are low salt, no fat, and we build on that premise as we cook those items and serve them to you. So there's a lot of learning that goes in it. And I'm Cynthia Applin, Nancy Lyons. We're happy to be here, and we're going to let you all have lunch. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, lunch is ready. We're going to release 3 tables at a time, and those who have the clothespin attached will get a lunch. So if you have a clothespin and you're at one of the tables, just go out and get your lunch. I think there's turkey, chicken, and there is a vegan dish. Okay, are you ready to start? Okay.
Probably might ask them, the ones that don't have one,
Mm-hmm.
just let them know.
That
Just
it
to let 'em
Right. Right. Okay, and I was just informed, so if you don't have a clothespin, I think we will have enough lunches where everyone can be served. So the first ones who do have, and then after we'll have those who do not have clothespins.